when we're done. This summer, we're going to be doing a version of this class online, and I want to set up a YouTube channel so that people can share the stuff that they've done in this class, as well as so we can have a forum for future lectures that are recorded so that everybody has access to them. And I'm going to try to be setting that up today. I tried yesterday, and there was some problems with the user interface, namely me. So I'm going to try again this morning to set that up. But ultimately, before our term is out, what I would like is to have people that are doing the research. You'll have your PowerPoint presentations on YouTube so that other people can see them later. And the people doing service learning will just talk about the service learning thing for a few minutes and put that up on YouTube as well so people can see that. Before we get into that a little bit more, I just wanted to know, how are the carvings progressing that people are doing?
Pretty good.
What was that? Pretty good?
Pretty good.
All right, excellent. I'm debating whether or not to start next week on the next module so that you guys have a rest doing that. Would you guys prefer, and I'd like to hear from at least half of you, would you prefer that we carve for another week before taking a break from it and then come back to it? Or would you like to move on to something else for a bit and then come back to the carving?
I'd like to carve for another week.
Me
Okay.
too.
Yeah, me too.
I agree. Yeah, that's nice.
What was that? JC, I heard an
I said same.
Same. Okay. All right.
I'd like to carve for another week.
So another week. Anybody else?
And you said that we will come back to it, right? Like
Absolutely.
we don't have to be completely done next week if we do carve for another week.
Right. And one of the reasons why we're doing it this way is the last 2 semesters, people have told me that the next module that we do really helped them when they came work on their carving. And so we'll, if you'd like, we'll concentrate on the carving for this next week. We'll do the next module for 2 weeks and come back to the carving for an additional week or 2. Does everybody concur?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right.
Out of curiosity, what is the next module?
Oh, I don't know. I say stuff like that so everybody thinks I know what I'm doing. I really have no idea. No, actually, the next module we're going to be dealing, it's called Structure with Skin. And Jason bought a whole bunch of skewer sticks. You basically make a skeletal structure of something, and then you cover parts of it with things like paper or cloth. And we've had some really spectacular failures in the past, but there's been a lot of really cool stuff. And sometimes people use their own materials. Sometimes people will use the stuff that's in class. But one of the reasons why the people doing carving appreciated that was it helped them to see, when they came back to the carving, it helped them to see the plaster in a completely different light. And they were able to do stuff with it that they hadn't even considered before. So, and again, we'll go back onto that. And if you are interested, go to Module 4 and just watch some of the videos in the research section of Module 4. And that'll show you a little bit more about what we're talking about. As you move forward, I've been getting a couple questions about how do we finish off the sculptures, things like that. How do we smooth them out? Um, again, since we're going to be doing the other module for about 2 weeks, we'll come back mid-March, and that's when we'll finish off the plaster. Smoothing it out, one thing you can do is there's 2 different grits of sandpaper in the classroom. On that, there's that plastic bin with a red lid that's on the top of the little cabinet, or on top of the short cabinet, and that has 2 different grits of sandpaper, 220 and 320. You can take one of those discs. You can use that. We just keep them as discs. They're a little bit more flexible, and you can hold them in your fingers, and then you can sand down areas in your sculpture. Sometimes people like to, when they get all done forming the sculpture, go through it with one tool to do texture that way. And other times people have left parts of it rough and really smooth off other parts. You can also paint it. There's a couple different ways of painting it. Plaster is incredibly porous. So before you do any final painting or anything like that on it, what you got to do is make sure that it's completely dry. The best way to do that is actually to take it home, set it on a vent of your at your apartment, and just let it sit there overnight, and that will suck out most of the moisture. And then when you start going to paint it, you'll need to use something that will just act as a primer. Most of you will probably use acrylic paints of some sort or another, and just pretty much any spray paint labeled as primer, or things like gouache. If you guys work with gouache, just paint that on, thin it out a little bit, and paint it on, put it back on the air intake overnight, let it dry completely, and just do that a couple times. That will fill up the porosity of the surface of the plaster. I do not know if porosity is a real word, but I'm going to use it with confidence so that you guys all believe it's a real word, because I think that'll be good enough. And then once that's sealed, then you can do different spray paints. You can paint it with watercolor. You can do all sorts of different stuff with it. So it does not have to stay white. Another thing we talked about is beeswax. And you can get beeswax from Hobby Lobby. And thank you, Lauren. You made me feel better. You can use beeswax from Hobby Lobby. The easiest way to work with that is to get a couple crappy dishes from DI, so you can throw them away when you're done. You don't feel guilty. By crappy dishes, I'm talking about specifically bowls, bowls that you can probably even put in the microwave, and get a hair dryer. And then you can get a few chip brushes from a place like Harbor Freight or Walmart for really, really cheap. It should be chip brushes with the bristles and not with sponge, because what you'll be doing is heating up that beeswax with a hair dryer and heating up your section of your sculpture with the hair dryer. Make sure that the beeswax is all melted. Start using the chip brush, and you basically point the hair dryer at the beeswax, get it good and hot, dip your brush in, point it really close to your sculpture. Point your hairbrush to the sculpture to heat it up, and brush really quick a little bit. And you have to keep going back and forth like that every 5 to 10 seconds as you go back and forth like that. And that will actually get the beeswax onto the sculpture. And then once you do that, hold the hair dryer over the sculpture, get it good and warm so that the beeswax starts soaking in, and you can even start brushing it a little bit more with the chip brush. The hairs will come out. You got to pick those out, and do, of course, all these things on like stacks of newspapers, stuff like that, so you don't ruin your apartment. And after you get the wax in there, one way to smooth it out is to get old t-shirt material, preferably non-dyed, so gray or white t-shirt material, just scraps of it, And you can, again, instead of getting the plaster really hot with the hairdryer, warm it up and then rub over it with just a wad of the t-shirt material. And what that will do is pick up the extra and smooth out what's there. And after you do that a couple times so that there's less and less beeswax showing up on the t-shirt material, then stop applying heat and just do the same thing at room temperature with new t-shirt material, and that will smooth it out. Another interesting texture you can get is with jeans material, denim, doing the same thing with denim. It won't polish it as much, but it will do something interesting to it. And you can even heat up the beeswax a little bit, press the denim into it and pull the denim away and get that denim texture on the surface of the beeswax. Do that and you can start, you can even spray paint it after putting the beeswax on. You can apply the beeswax really sloppily, heat up some parts of it so you start getting a little bit of drips and things, and then spray paint that. And I don't know, how many of you have used acrylic spray paint with beeswax or anything like that, or any sort of paint with beeswax?
I haven't.
You haven't? With most paints, the beeswax will cause the paint that's over it to bead up in some areas and to collect in others. And once the paint dries, it gives this really weird texture that, I don't know, how many of you guys have seen the movie Silent Hill? It's from
Yeah,
a
I've
video.
seen it, Andrew.
You seen
I
it?
played the games.
Do you remember? Yeah, it was. Who was the director? Christoph Gaines.
I think so.
Remember. Yeah, but he also did a couple other really odd. I mean, it's a French adaptation of a video game, so you know it's going to be weird. But remember when the bells ring and the paint starts boiling and then peeling away with like strips of old skin?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the kind of texture you get when you add spray paint or watercolor to layers of beeswax. And it can be really cool. You do that, you put several different layers on it, build up a really fascinating texture, and then you can finish it all off with the clear Krylon shellac, and it can look really cool. Any other ideas that you guys have about the plaster to finish it off? Now, we're not going to finish it next week. I just want you to have some of these ideas boiling around in your brain so that they kind of ferment there a little bit. And then when we come back to it, usually people have a pretty good idea of what they are going to do. What other paints can you apply to the plaster? How many of you work with watercolor?
I do.
Okay.
Two.
That's a really good one to work to deal with. You can get. I probably would not use like my squirrel brush because I don't know. Mine cost like $85, and I think getting plaster dust in it would probably be a bad idea. But you can get some of those smooth, like 1-inch wide paint brushes that are nicer than a chip brush. Mix up some watercolor with that and put several layers on it. Then drip the watercolor on. You can do something similar with thinning down oil paints and thinning down acrylics. You can use the pour medium with acrylics to thin them down and thin it down more with water and build up several different layers of color like that. What other things do you think you guys could do? Because these do not need to stay white. Who has looked up Praxidil? I'm sorry, Grace, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, if we wanted them to stay white, can they?
Yeah, they can. You can do that. I'd like you guys to think about experimenting with it a little bit more. If you want to do it with white, I would suggest getting the texture exactly the way you want it and then spraying it with like Krylon does make an acrylic overcoat that's clear, and spraying it with that would kind of keep it from producing dust on into the future. And I think that could look really very cool. And if you have that set up outside on a newspaper and just spray it from every different angle and do that with light spray every 10-15 minutes, after a couple hours you'll build up the plaster will soak in the paint, but you can get it so that it builds up a matte finish, and then your hand won't get the white plaster powder on it every time you pick it up. So if you want to do that, I would highly recommend spraying it with some sort of a fixative like that after you're all done polishing it by hand and getting it the way you want. But if you want it to stay white, that's just fine. Who watched the videos about Praxiteles that I sent to everybody last week? Praxiteles was a Greek sculptor that really concentrated on applying the golden section to the human form. Anybody watch that?
When did you send that out?
I sent that out with last week when I sent the link to our video conversation, and there was also 3 short videos on Göbekli Tepe. I'm just gonna Praxiteles. Everybody knows him now because of the raw stone of his, or the polished stone of his sculptures. But he said himself that he thought they weren't finished until they were painted. So even he liked applying paint. But I think there is something kind of pure about leaving the plaster white. But I want you guys to have all sorts of different options so that, say, for example, maybe some areas of the plaster would look great leaving it white, and then you wanted to apply watercolor to other areas and maybe drip some watercolor on. That'd be totally fine. One student about a year ago finished their sculpture early and then set candles on it, and every day for the rest of the semester he just lit a candle and let it melt all the way down so that the wax was dripping over the sculpture. So by the end of the semester you could see the plaster sculpture, but it was coated, completely coated with layers and layers of dripped wax. And that was kind of an interesting way to finish it too. So there's lots of different kinds of things that can be done. Okay, let's do a roll really quick. Is Kayla here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All righty. Sarah, are you here? How about Camilla?
I am here.
All righty. Nicole, I saw you. You're still here, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Bailey?
Here.
All righty. Madeline? Is Emma here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. How about Grace? You're here.
Yep.
Summer, are you here? How about Kelly? Yep, you're here.
I'm here, yeah.
Catherine, are you here? Yep. Okay.
Here.
Taylor? Yeah, you're here.
Yep. Hi.
JC? I saw you right at the beginning. Are you still here?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
Excellent. Alexis?
Here.
Super. Brianna?
Hello, I'm here.
Excellent. Brooke, are you here? All right. Lauren? Is Lauren with us today?
I'm here.
David, I heard you. You're the one that actually know what I'm talking about when I said Silent Hill.
Yep, sure am.
Man, Sean Bean will never die, will he? Okay, Hiram, are you here? How about Rachel? You're here, right?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. Okay. Now, I think what I want to do is, like I said, I'm trying to set up the YouTube channel for us. And I think what I want to do is next week, I'll do the video with the evening class. And that's when we'll do the, I'm thinking that's when I'll do the quiz review for the next section. And then you guys will have the code words and need to go on to the YouTube channel and check it out over the weekend. And I want to do this. I want to see from both the morning section and the afternoon section if this works for everybody and if you think it would be something that would be useful and helpful in the future for the online classes. Would you guys be okay with doing that? So that next Friday, instead of the morning class, you guys would be accessing the video and then sending me the code words for attendance.
Like you want us to not show up and then go in and watch the recording?
Right. We would not have a morning section. You would just watch the recording of the afternoon section.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Okay.
Would we
I
just email you the code words?
Yeah, exactly. And the code words were basically, that's one thing I've got to do, find out a way to prevent somebody from making a comment on the YouTube channel saying, hey, here's the code words for everybody. But
Can't you turn off the comments?
I'm sure you can. You're dealing with somebody who's in his 50s, where I remember when Otter Pops were a thing and exciting, because the fact that you could go home and freeze your own popsicles was super cool. That's how old I am. But Emma, I think you're right. I think I can just turn off the comments, and I think that's what I'll do. But essentially what you'll do is I'll have a couple code words. You'll need to go through and say, tell me what the code words were, and then what I was talking about. And when we do this, like for the quiz review, you'll say like the number. It was question number 2, and the code word was Argosy or something like that. And then you'll just send me an email with all the code words. And you don't have to say anything else. I just know from those that the fact that you got them that you attended. And there's 3 code words for today as well. The first code word is Argosy. And so, whoever comes back for attendance to watch this video later, that's the first code word. And I'll give the second code word right away as well. The second code word is millennium. And then I'll give the third code word later on.
If we're here, do we need to email you the code words?
No, if you're here, I've got you down as attending. Let's see, Brianna Hill, you're attending. So I've got you down, you don't need to worry about it. The code words are only for the people that are not attending live, that want to get attendance credit for the lecture, and that's the only reason we're doing it. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, all right, good. Because if you're here, I'll usually take attendance like a couple times just to make sure that I give you credit for showing up. Because I think last week, one of the people that showed up when I called their name, they never said anything, and they had to tell me later. So they got the attendance credit. But if you're here live, you don't need to worry about it. It's only if you don't attend the lecture and you want to get attendance for being there. All right, there are a couple things that I wanted to talk about in the remaining time that we have together. One is, I have been really impressed with how careful you guys are. When you work with plaster, that is the single messiest medium of all the stuff that we're going to work with. And you guys have been doing an exceptional job getting everything cleaned up. And I know that all of you are professional artists as well. That's one of the unique things I think that makes UVU stand up a little bit higher than other schools I've worked at, because all of you have received commissions for your works. You've done other stuff. You've functioned as professional artists, and you have experience doing that. And I think that shows in the way that you take care of your workspace. I think it shows in the way that you clean up after yourself, and I think it shows in your work ethic. And so I just wanted to put that out there and let you know how much I appreciate the fact that you guys do that and take care of it. Thank you very much. It is, when we leave the classroom in a lot better state than we come into it every single time, there's a part of my 6-year-old self that reemerges and just kind of does the neener neener dance. I'm just really pleased. Thank you very much. So that's one thing that I wanted to get off, or to get out right away. Second is, let's talk a little bit about the research and service channels. 4 of you are doing the service, everybody else is doing research. This week, I'm going to put out the rest of the modules for that. They're going to be spaced out so that the research people, you have to do a annotated bibliography, and I'll send out examples of what that is. Essentially, an annotated bibliography is you read something or you access something, and I would prefer it to be a written article, because those are easier to deal with, frankly, when you're doing your research. But what you'll need to do is cite 8 different sources, and for each of those sources, you'll have to give a annotation, which is basically a 1 to 2 paragraph essay, and it's essentially 3 to 8 sentences at the most about what you read. Essentially, why is this article important to the artist that you're focusing on? What does it have to say about the artist? What's the unique contribution? And essentially, you are giving yourself notes so that your future self, instead of reading the article again, can just read those annotation sentences and get the gist of the article and why it was important. That should take you between 3 to 5 hours, that portion. And that is really incredibly helpful for when you go back and do your PowerPoint. Then you'll be able to go through and check those, check your annotations out, see if you need to revisit any of the articles, so you can put the stuff together for your PowerPoint later on. There are a couple really important things to be mindful of. I'm going to see if I can find the link to it. I found a couple really good links to how you verify the bias of an article. I'm going to ask you a trick question. Are there any unbiased articles?
No,
No.
Why do you say that?
because there are no unbiased people.
Yeah, it's almost impossible unless you have severe developmental challenges. Like if you're a murderous sociopath, and even then they will have appetites instead of biases. But everybody has to have biases in order to function. I mean, that's how we govern the intake of information. That's how we decide what information is valid and useful to us. Now, how do you use that? How do you apply that when you're doing research for something? Well, one way is look at the source. That's the first thing you do. Who has written the source? I'm going to compare, we'll go to Wikipedia in just a second, but if you are doing, say, research on national parks and conservation and strip mining, you know, those three things together, are you going to look at articles written by the Forestry Service in a different way than you are going to be looking at articles from Kennecott, for example? Which do you think would be less biased, talking about conservation? The articles put out by the Kennecott company or articles put out by Forestry Service? Does anybody know who Kennecott is?
I don't.
Kennecott is a company that does strip mining and pit mining. They do a lot of copper and zinc mining. Have any of you ever seen a pit mine before? The most amazing one I've seen is around Butte, Montana. This thing is maybe a quarter-mile deep, but how they mine is basically just start digging a hole and expanding the hole out shallow enough so that with shallow enough sides that the trucks can go down and pick up the gravel, essentially. Then they process the gravel. It is something that the area is so devastated when they're done that essentially it becomes a blight that you can see from the satellite. It is huge. The one near Butte, Montana, I think now is over 2 miles across. And it's just a hole in the ground. Kennecott, over the last 10, 15 years, has worked really hard not to leave blights like that as permanent scabs on the landscape. They've tried to change their public image quite a bit, but still, if they write an article about conservation, it's going to be a completely different slant than if somebody who their entire life all they wanted to be was a park ranger because they loved trees. They're going to write a completely different article. Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you are doing that, that's one thing to look out for as you're doing your research. What is try to see if you can identify the bias of the person doing the article. And when you're dealing with artists, sometimes that'll be a bias whether or not somebody likes the artist or likes their work. Sometimes the bias will be about the medium. The person writing the article will really enjoy the medium or they don't understand it. I've had reviews of my work done by people that were religious fundamentalists, and that's the only thing they could see was how I was disgracing the name of God because I was dealing with something that didn't fit into their perspective of religion. So you get all sorts of different biases, but that's not something to be aware. Something else, several years ago, I had an article written about my work that was published in an Egyptian newspaper. And then over the next 4 or 5 months, there were at least a dozen other articles that showed up in European and Middle Eastern and North African newspapers. I got really excited because all these people were writing about my stuff. And then I found out that these dozen articles were all either plagiarisms or direct quotes from that one Egyptian article. So it was essentially the same article over and over again. There is a term for that where people will retransmit somebody else's writing, giving full credit to them. It's not plagiarism, but it's just a retransmission with a different title of the same article. And that's something else to be really mindful of. Is somebody, as you're doing research, is somebody taking the same information and just presenting it with a different title? Online newspapers do that quite a bit. And it's just basically they slap a new title onto somebody else's article, and at the opening of the article they say, this article was first published under the title of such and such by so and so. So be mindful of that as well. Now, what are you going to do if the artist that you picked, you need 8 sources, 8 reference points, but you only find 3? What are you going to do? Anybody?
Beg you for mercy.
Actually, the easiest thing to do is tell me, and then just go on the discussion board and pick a different artist. Not that big of a deal. That's all you got to do. Find a different artist that has more written about them. Sometimes the easiest way to do that is find an older artist or an artist that has been producing longer. They'll have more articles. I would also look up alternate spellings of the artist. Sometimes that will help. If the artist that you picked has an umlaut in their name, see if you can spell it slightly different and find their work. Do a search under titles of their works. A lot of the times, Andy Goldsworthy will have articles written on commissions that he's done. So maybe if you type up his name, that doesn't show up as rapidly as an article about one of the stone fences he did. And there are other examples like that. So I would try multiple searches before you throw in the towel and give up. Let me know that you can't find enough articles, and then switch to a different artist. That's totally fine. Now, for the service, this next thing, what you're going to be doing is doing just a short amount of research on different service channels on campus, but also look for companies or organizations in the area that you can work with and contact them. And I would contact multiple ones, email them, call them. If you call them, and a really important thing is to write down, take notes while you're talking to them, and then email them right afterwards saying, in our conversation, this is what we talked about. And you'll need this next section, or this thing for the service learning, you'll need to be able to find the people that you want to work with and be able to articulate the kinds of things that you want to have as your project, and kind of hash that out. So the annotated bibliography should take you 3 to 5 hours. This portion of the service learning should take about 3 to 5 hours as well. And then the next section, just so that you can look forward, the research learning, or the research people will be doing their PowerPoint, and the service learning people will be designing and doing their project, and that'll be the bulk of time for them. And then the last thing for the research people is that you'll do an essay, and the service learning people will essentially do just a short report on their project, essentially, and write thank you notes to the people that were involved. And that's pretty much it. And we'll cover more of those later. But this weekend, that's when you'll see those modules. I'm sorry, I should have sent it out last weekend. I had surgery, and I'm still recovering from the surgery. That's the excuse that I'm using, and I'm sticking to it. Do we have any questions from anybody?
I have a question. So I'm doing the service learning. I sent you an email about it a few days ago, just about like what I was planning on doing to see if it was kind of under the umbrella that fit. So I sent you an email about it. Did you get the email?
Let me check right away. Okay, you didn't send it through Canvas, did you?
No, I saw on your syllabus that you just listed it, like listed your UVU email.
I think the biggest thing regarding the service learning is that it ties in with your professional interests in art at UVU. And it sounds like what you are talking about Did you start this after January 11th?
I started like doing like the research and stuff early on and kind of reaching out to some of the teachers and stuff just so I could get in contact with
When
them.
did you start reaching out to the teachers?
This month, like the beginning of this month.
And it sounds like this is dealing with your interest in photography
Yes.
as an art student. I think that this would be really good. You're not producing an artwork for somebody. You're helping people do training for photography. And what's your focus, your emphasis at school here at UVU?
I'm not exactly sure. I think I want to do editorial photography, but like I think getting experience in different types of photography has helped me overall, and so like I was going to talk to the students about the kind of different works you can go into and how like I'm doing sports photography right now, but you can work into different aspects as well.
I think that's a really good application, and it's one thing that I really like about what you're doing is that it's not a straightforward approach. You haven't decided, okay, my emphasis is in 17th century French gilded chairs, so I'm going to only find a service project that deals with French antique furniture. What you've done is found a way to apply your interests directly to something that the community really is interested in and needs. So I think that's an excellent solution. So yeah, go forward with that. And I like I said, I'll send that module out this weekend. And it sounds like you're really well on your way. That sounds like a really good project.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure before I like started setting up meetings and moving forward with the project that it was okay to move forward with it. So thank you.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I like that. Okay, third code word is Neolithic. Which means having to do with new stone. But that third code word is Neolithic. All right, any other questions? Kayla, that was an excellent question. Thank you very much. Any other questions from either service or research personnel?
So I'm also doing the service learning. Just to clarify, we need to know what our plan is for our project this week.
No, I am sending out the module this weekend, and over the next couple weeks, that's when you'll figure out what your plan is. Kayla was really excited about this, I think, and just is really getting involved. But yeah, you don't have to plan over the next day or so. I'm sending that out, and then you can figure that out over the next couple weeks. All right. Any other questions? Does anybody have any other questions about the research stuff?
Will all of what you kind of went over be published in a module somewhere, if not already?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, it is. It is all published. I have links to videos and stuff like that. The problem is it's all in a different format, and I just have to tweak the format so that you guys get it as one discrete module. And that's what I've got to do this weekend for you. And again, I should have done it last weekend, but I am in absolutely no way condoning drug use on any level. But I will say that I am very pleased with how advanced medical technology has gotten over the last 20, 30 years. And so even though I was recovering from my surgery, I felt it was really important that I shouldn't finish up the modules until my mind was clear. We'll just leave it at that. But yeah, David, you should see that like by tomorrow night, Sunday afternoon, something like that. And if you guys have any other questions, start asking me. Email me right away and let me know. But it should be pretty straightforward. I think. Have all of you done annotated bibliographies before? Has any of them? Okay, Hiram, you did. Anybody else?
I have.
Okay, so you have a pretty good head start. What I have is a couple of videos that just talk about how to do it, and then there is one video about being aware of writer bias, and I don't know if that's in the module. I think I lost that link. I'll put that in there as well, so you can watch that also. And again, for the work logs for these things, the work log should be tied directly to the stuff you're doing for that module. And you'll notice that there's due dates for the module 3 carving. There's only a couple of the due dates done. After today's discussion as to moving forward, we're carving next week instead of moving forward directly with the next module. I'm going to adjust the remaining due dates on that so that you guys know what to expect. And I was going to say something else that was vitally important. I totally slipped my mind, so never mind. But if there's no more questions, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Again, be on the lookout for those modules on service and research this weekend. You should see those by Sunday afternoon. And next Friday, again, we will not have this morning session. I will send you a recording of the evening section for the other section. And we'll start doing that on YouTube as well. All the lectures aren't going to be on YouTube, but I want to see if we can get this going so that when you guys do your PowerPoint and service learning reports, you can do that on the YouTube. So on the YouTube, just an evidence of how old I am. You can do those, upload those to YouTube and share them with everybody. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Yeah, when I say the YouTube, I sound like somebody's grandparents, don't I?
Very much
so.
Have a good weekend.
You too. We'll see you guys later.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
You too.
Yeah, I suppose.
All right. Well, hey, we'll see you guys.